Hi, Sunita. So
Hello, Rehan.
it's a great pleasure for me here to have a conversation with Sunita Kohli today. And our title for this conversation will be Lucknow Cookbook, the Lucknow Cookbook, authored by her mother, Sur, and Sunita Kohli herself. But before going in that detail, I would just like to introduce my honorable author today. She doesn't need any introduction, I think. And it's my words are small for her, but at least कुछ छोटे अल्फाजों में मैं तारुफ बस कराना चाहता हूँ. Sunita Kohli is an interior designer and she is having a reputed experience and a leadership in a historic interior architectural restoration, I think from last 5 decades, working in many global projects, many local projects, and she is one of the few honored interior designers who received or conferred with a award of Padam Shri from our Indian government in 1992. But today we are here for sharing her passion. That is a cooking that she imbibed from her mother, and also she traveled widely all across the world, and she bring down her experiences, culinary cultures, and memos in this wonderful title. So, Sunita, welcome to our panel, and it's a great
Thank
pleasure
you
for
so
us to host this
much.
session. Okay,
Ji.
Sunita. So before going to any detail of the book, I would like to know the story, how this book was born. What was the genesis of this book?
Well, the book came about quite serendipitously, as they say, because my publishers, Aleph, actually I'm commissioned to do a big book on heritage for them. And this was my mother's book. She had done 345 recipes for another publisher. And then that somehow fell through because the commissioning editor, I think, passed away, unfortunately. So I just asked David Devedar of Aleph. I said that, do you know of a publisher who could publish a cookbook, which is of my mother's? And he immediately said, Sunita, we don't do cookbooks. He said, but let me think about it. Fortunately for us, he thought about it and he said he would publish the book as long as I thought I could contribute a 10,000 word essay on my parents' story and co-author the book with my mother. I thought, and he only wanted 150 recipes. I thought, isse aasan cheez kya ho sakti hai? Because my mother had 345 recipes. I only had to abstract 150, and I'm sort of English, so to write 10,000 words would not be difficult. But it turned out to be the most difficult 3 months of my life writing this book because my mother added literally 1,000 more recipes she gave me to look at. So I said, now we have to stop because only 150 are required. So this book is a result of uh, that journey.
So, Sunita, that's so nice to listen about how this started or the genesis of the book was started. But if we go to the first chapter, because that is the chapter that touches me a most, but that's definitely the book is more about that. But every column has its own anecdote, every food has its own connecting memory, cuisines, what you
Yes.
presented in a sectional order. But the chapter title, Watan Lost and Watan Found, from a Lahore to Lucknow, that's
Yes.
something for me who loves heritage, who loves old memories, give me a nostalgia and also the pain of partition with connecting memories of your father, your connection with the other side of Redcliffe Line. Can you give some glimpses of this wonderful chapter? That's really one of the beautiful memoirs I have ever read.
Well, I wrote that chapter and tried to just collect what would fit into the words, the number of words that I was given. A brief history of my parents, because my parents are, they came to Lucknow as refugees. But Lucknow is such a welcoming city known for its Ganga-Jamuni tehzeeb, and that they embraced my parents, so to speak. And my mother, incidentally, she's originally Multani, but her family was settled in Quetta. My father's Rajput, but settled in, for generations, they were settled in Lahore, which he called his Vatan. And so it's that journey of moving from there to Lucknow, and all the travails and tribulations of a family that left Lahore with nothing and started life completely afresh. I think it was also a very it was also a very brave generation because the courage with which they looked at things and the courage with which they started a new life for themselves.
Yeah, the chapter when I was reading, I read the how your father, late father, Inderjeet Sur, when once he visited post partition to that Lakshmi mansion, and he
Hmm.
found his utensils, and he was so nostalgic at the moment. So that memories always remain with him. And also, you found a chance during one of your restoration work while he was working for the Haveli of Maharana Ranjit Singh. You again revisited that the same physical spaces. So physical spaces change with time, but the memories you cling it for your entire life. This is how
Yes,
when
and
we
my
move.
father had so many stories that he told us
Yeah,
about Lahore of those days and Lakshmi mansions.
yeah,
And one of the things, of course, which even I still find very moving is he recounted this story to us many times about the only one and only time that he got permission to go back to return to Lucknow, I beg your pardon, to Lahore after partition, and and he knew the person who was now living in his flat, and he got the permission to visit it, and he saw that everything was the same, excepting there were different photographs in his silver frames,
yes,
and then the lady of the house said, "Mr. Soor, will you have a cup of tea?" And when she served him tea in his silver tea service with his monogram on it. That's the first time he always said he realized that he was homeless. And then, of course, he goes on further to say that at one point, he became so overcome because there's only a limited amount of papers and letters that he could carry back to Lucknow from this apartment, that he just thought, he said, "I'd go and lie down on my bed." And he went into his bedroom and he lay down, and the lady came running and said, "Mr. Soor, Mr. Soor, what are you doing lying on our bed?" So these are things, it was no longer his bed, it was no longer
yeah,
his home.
definitely different.
So,
And then the feeling that came up at that time always clings
Ji,
with
Ji.
him
But this
entirely.
happened to thousands of families, and each
Thousand
family
of the
has its
families, yes.
own, their own stories, their own narratives on both sides of the border.
Both
Actually, it's
sides,
not just
definitely.
Ji, Ji.
And again, when he came back, his description of Lucknow, the royal hotel where he stayed, the letter
Yeah,
that he wrote it, definitely carries the lost time of the Lucknow. That even today we don't find such a Lucknow. What was captured by him when he came from Lahore and he settled in that city. So, if you allow me, can I read a small passage from your book
Ji, Ji,
of
of course.
the language and the manners in Lahore has always reminded me of Lucknow. Even though in Lahore they speak mostly in Punjabi, but that Punjabi was full of Persian and Urdu words. My father, like many well educated men of his generation, was conversant with Persian and Urdu. And my mother spoke Pashto, Multani, Punjabi. Although she could read and write it in Urdu, her spoken Urdu was very anglicized. The hospitality of in Lahore is extraordinary and food is legendary. There are some striking similarities to the cuisine of Lucknow, but one difference is that cuisine of Lahore is more robust in the tradition of the Punjab. The traditional cuisine in Lucknow is more refined, more aromatic, more aesthetically creative, and it is served with greater nazakat. So now our talk will start on the nazakat of Lucknow food and how it was carried and imbibed by your family and your mother cooking interest. And this is what we are going to talk about in the coming time of this session.
Ji.
So, yes, Sunita. So, can you just talk about little bit about the culinary culture that evolved on your dining table, on your home, that ghar ka khana that came up in this shape of the book? So, how it was
Yeah.
largely celebrated at your home?
Firstly, I have to say that this book, the Lucknow Cookbook, is not about Awadhi cuisine. It's about the everyday food that
Everyday
has
food.
been that was served in our homes, still is, and in the homes of our many friends that my parents made. And that was a very broad spectrum of different communities. So sabka asar padne laga. Everything
Exactly.
influenced. Like Lucknow cuisine itself is influenced by food from Persia, from food from Turkey, food from Afghanistan, and the ingredients that came from there. So this is really a collection of recipes of everyday khana. And because there was a very strong community of Anglo-Indians also, because the British had been there for so many years.
So many
So
years.
that influence was there. And so into Lucknowi khana also crept in what we called Angrezi khana. But it's not, and this Angrezi khana was Indianized because actually it was Anglo-Indian cuisine.
Yes.
So it has biryanis, it has palaus, it has tehri, it has kari khima, it has murg musallam, it's got different types of kebabs and all that it's got. And uh, I'm happy to say that this book is now in its seventh or eighth
8 year.
reprint.
Yeah.
I mean, it came out 3 years ago, but it seems to have acquired a life of its own. And like
Yes.
you
If you see, that's what we want to say right now.
Yes,
This reminds me.
you contacted me out of nowhere and
Yeah.
asked for this book to,
Exactly.
for me to speak about this book. So similarly, other people still continue to do this. And I'm happy to say, as far as Aleph is concerned, they're publishing another cookbook of mine. So apart from the book that I'm doing on design and another one on heritage. So I think cookbooks seem to have become are gaining popularity all over the
Gaining.
world. And I'm happy that I have this book which I've contributed to that genre of books.
And before coming, one of my friend who is pediatrician, but he loves so much Indian culture, so he runs a famous handle Indo-Islamic culture. It's quite famous on Twitter and Facebook. So I asked him to
Gee,
join the session. He sent me the screenshot. He said this is one of my favorite ebooks, and what you are talking about is with me. And me and
really, how
my wife
nice.
has enjoyed this book, and we enjoyed a lot, and we share your program on our handle. So
And the
that's
book
that.
is available on, I don't know whether in a Riyadh bookstore it's available or not, but the
But at
book is
least those who
available on Amazon.
Amazon. It's available on Amazon, and anyone who want to buy a ebook, they can purchase it from Amazon. That's
Gee,
the point.
gee.
So, Sunita, we can go ahead for our conversation. So, if we go to the book, we will find that every part is divided into the sections. So there is like a sectional divide. If one want to read about the veggies, that's
Hmm.
not part we can say Awadhi culture, but it was popular in the Lucknow in which you were brought up. The families of the Lucknow, that
No, no, it
homemade.
was very popular.
Very
It's very
popular, yes.
popular because see, even though the sort of the culture of the city is Muslim, but there
Yes,
were many Hindus there also. There were
yes,
Kayas who had their own way of cooking meat. There were Brahmins, so there's other ways of doing things. So this book is really an amalgamation of all these various strains of people that called Lucknow their home. Some, of course, have lived there for generations, and some,
exactly.
like my parents, came as refugees.
Exactly. And so if when we go to the book of veggies, so before going to that, can I share the screen and share some of the beautiful and wonderful gustatory clicks that I received from you? That's a part of
Jeez,
our book. So we'll just share
jeez,
the screen for the audiences.
jeez.
So let us see that. Only a minute it will take. One minute. Okay. So this is the cover page of the book, Sunita. If you are able to visualize the screen, can you find it here?
Gee, I can see the cover.
Oh, that's good. So it's a back cover. There is just a description how Sunita has explained that Lucknow tehzeeb is represented in its foods. It confluences what she talk about Turkey, Persia, Afghanistan, infused with the local flavors, Sindhi flavor, Punjabi flavor. So this is all about the food that was largely celebrated in Lucknow. Here is a memorial picture. Chansuri, your mother, I think. You. Can you
वो
please
मुझे
talk?
अभी दिखलाई नहीं दे रही. I can't
Oh,
see it.
1 minute. It will come little bit, I think, delay due to some time connectivity issue. Can you
जी.
able to visualize it now?
I can't see it as yet. I can only see the cover of the book.
Cover of the book. Okay. Now you can see. Let me stop it and again share it once. Let me see. 1 minute. We will again reshare it because sometime we with the speed due to connectivity issue, maybe it will not
जी.
appear on the
जी.
screen. Maybe.
जी.
Let me try again. And let's see. It's here. Open it. Share screen.
Well, I'm glad it's you doing it and not me because I'm
No,
flexible.
no, no. I will try to manage it. Let us see that now our
See,
screen is visualized. If I make
that's
F5,
my mother.
yeah,
That's
you
my
can see now.
mother. जी.
Okay. Yes. Now can you visualize it, Sunita?
Ji, I can see that. That's my
Okay.
mother with our youngest daughter, who is, we co-founded my design company. That's Kohelika and myself.
So a little bit about these moments. I think this is related or connected to this book.
Ji, this was at one of the book events. I don't exactly remember which book event it was of the Lucknow Cookbook only, but it was one of those. Maybe
From
you could
2000.
show the recipes,
Yes.
the
Yes.
dishes, I mean.
Yes. So here we come up with a very wonderful picture. This some signature dishes of Lucknow is there in this picture.
And of our house, actually. I mean,
Yeah, this is from your house.
there's
So if you
tandoori
want to,
kebab, and there's fish tikka, and there's shami kebab.
okay, this
This
picture.
is an Irish stew, which my mother was used to make. It's very Anglo-Indian. It's very much something that people have in Lucknow. And as a little aside, Begum Akhtar's husband,
Yes. I
Parsi
was
Saab,
going to ask this story with you.
yeah,
Yes.
he used to love this. And every time he saw my mother at a function or at a dinner or somewhere, he said, "Chan, mujhe kab bula rahi ho Irish stew khane ke liye?" So this
So,
is Irish stew.
so she was fond of this, and it has a story connected with Begum
Ji.
Akhtar. And
Ji. And
now
also,
come,
my younger sister is,
yeah,
she's a professional musician. She sings
Rekha,
semi-classical. Ji.
Rekha Surya. She's the one of the youngest. I think the
She was the last of Begum Akhtar's
yeah
pupils.
last generation of pupils or students of who learn from her.
Ji.
And coming to very homemade dish that's served in a traditional utensils of our time or Lucknow, we can say. So here you can see the veggies and I think
Ji.
what is
This
chana
is
chana.
kurchan, chana, kala chana. This is kurchan paneer and kale chane ki bhujia, which we make in the house. And
Okay.
that is arar ki dal, and that's karela. You know, all Lucknowites and UP walas love karelas.
Yes.
So
and
we
and
have
you
many different ways of making it.
different ways of making it. and
Ji.
and what's this by the side of Karela, the utensil?
This is a gulab pash.
Gulab pash.
Ji. This is all part of what, Avadi things I've been collecting for several
Yes.
years now, all from
Awesome.
Lucknow. Ji.
And here is amazing dish from your collection of fishes, because when we go on fishes, we will talk some.
Ji. And this is a fish made in tomatoes and garlic. Though the use of tomatoes came very late to Lucknow because most salans and kormas will not use tomatoes, and neither do I. But in this particular dish, which is the fish is Gomti, the river Gomti, it's Sol Machi from there. And in fact, the older generation used to call tomatoes Vilaiti Began because they never used tomatoes. But our generation started to use it.
Yeah, because now it's quite common to use tomatoes in
Ji,
our.
ji. But we still don't use it in our traditional
traditional food.
dishes. Yeah.
Now here it's I think typical parathas, and this is palak gosht coming up
Ji.
from the section of your muttons.
Ji.
A very traditional veggie mix with mutton. That's a quite common culture in
In
the Muslim.
Lucknow, of course,
Yeah.
in Muslim families,
Yes.
they can't have vegetables on their own, I think.
Yes.
Everything is mixed with meat.
Meat. Yes.
Ji.
So mixing the meat with veggies is quite common. Now this is
Ji.
also very amazing because you find the mangoes here on the table, nargisi kofta,
Yes.
that has many legends how this name came up, but we'll not go
Ji.
in that detail. And also you can find the minced meat keema,
This,
what we say,
but with done with raw mangoes, keri
raw
keema.
meat. Kariya keema, huh? Am I right?
Hmm. Keri keema. Ji.
Kari keema.
And
Okay,
this is
here
murg
again,
musallam.
mur musallam with the naans, with roti, and with
Actually, it's with sheermal
yes,
and bakar khani and rumali roti.
Rumali roti. So three different types
Ji.
of bread here,
Ji.
and served with murg musallam. And interesting legends and anecdotes of murg musallam is also presented in the book. Now, what is this, Sunita?
This is dahi chicken, which is a real speciality of our house, and the recipe is in the book.
Yes.
I mean, I learned it from my mother, and I have a very interesting little anecdote about rotis in Lucknow because when this book was launched in Bombay by Avid Learning, and the chief guest was Javed Akhtar Saab, and he's also from Lucknow, and he said that in Lucknow in the old days, rotis were never made by the hazif. I mean,
Mhm.
rotis always used to be bought, bakar khani, sheermal.
Yes.
Even in our house, when I'm serving it, I mean,
Mm.
I buy them from Nizamuddin.
Mm.
But the biggest insult was, like he said, I mean, he said so and so had gone to so and so's house and then exclaimed, रजिया या जमीला जो भी नाम था,
Mhm.
रजिया सुना है कि तुम रोटी भी बनाती हो. That was the ultimate subtle insult.
Mm.
So rotis were never made in the house.
Okay,
Of
now this
course,
is very, very common view.
tehri.
We all had a memories connected with this typical tairi of UP, I think. Sunita, what did you
Ji.
say? Mixing all the veggies, and I don't know about in Lucknow. In Western UP, it is largely celebrated on weekends lunch in our
Yes.
childhood days.
Ji.
And
On
this raita
weekends,
is,
every Sunday we have
yeah,
every
especially
Sunday.
every
We have
Sunday when all the family members are present. This is largely celebrated with desi ghee and typical raita and chutneys, and there is
ji.
some
We have
preparation you have.
biryani and burani raita
Mm,
and kachumbar and hari chutney. That's our Sunday lunch.
that's some great.
Ji.
Now this picture, if we go again, the typical
This is
Awadhi
what.
biryani
Ji.
and khas daan is there, and this what is chutney?
Ji. That's hari again mango chutney, hare aam ki chutney, and
Mhm.
there's burani raita and there's kachumbar, and then
And
of
even
course
pan is
and then
covered in typical manner
ji.
on the khas daan. That's a typical
Ji.
traditional way
I
of
mean,
present.
there's no Indian meal unless you don't end it with a good pan. You
Good
know.
pan, yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. So this is a very typical mix of beverages. I think homemade beverages.
Yes, that we have. I mean, we make panna through the summer, which is again made out of raw mangoes. And as they say that if you have panna, you'll never get heat stroke. So there's
Yes,
panna and there's aam ka sharbat and there's anar ka sharbat and there's milk, doodh ka sharbat.
and now this food is. I think you will talk more about it.
This is jalebi pudding. I mean, a form of jalebi pudding has always, I guess, existed. But my mother made a real speciality of it. The recipe is in the book. It's very, very easy to cook. And this is also part of, a partition syndrome. that you never ever waste anything. You always reuse it. And in a sense, also, if Shahi Tukda is also done with Basi roti, Basi double roti.
Yes.
And, in places like Masuri or even in Lucknow, I mean, if jalebis were bought, they were not made in the house. If jalebis were bought and they came for tea, and if everything was not consumed, to jo bachi hui, the jalebis that were left over, my mother would then, you know, whip it up with eggs and milk and things and then bake it. And it's really a very delicious dessert. And we
And
have it all the time.
And I think this is one of the good tradition that we should continue. Instead of wasting a food and throwing a food, we need to
Gee,
reuse
I
it.
know.
That's I think a wonderful tradition that we need to carry on. Now, this some break.
This is, I showed tea because high teas were always a big thing in Lucknow. And I think this tradition really came because the British had been there. So
Yes,
in this, there's a chocolate cake, which is the recipe is there. It's made with mayonnaise and with a chocolate fudge topping, and a simple sponge cake. And both these things, incidentally, are cooked, were made for this book by my granddaughter. So my mother's great granddaughter, Anadia. So as I said, all four generations cook.
will
Uh,
cover in this book.
G. And then what you just get a little glimpse of are little sandwiches, and this is a house speciality, which I've also put a recipe in the book. These are korma sandwiches that I make, which everybody just loves. And the golis are, aloo, potato and corn, done it's covered with sesame seed. So, some things become, every house gets known for a special dish, jiska zaika alag hai, even if
Discuss
you
I
may. So that's the wonderful thing about eating in homes of
yes,
friends and other family members.
exactly. Now
Ji.
this come up with some khubanis, some puddings, and I think kheer, the very specific of Lucknow.
Ji. There's kheer and there's also ye aam ka meetha, which is
Kami.
a speciality of Lucknow. Again, the recipe, as I said, is in the book. I mean, there's nothing shown here which is
Yeah, definitely,
not in the
because
book.
we'll
Yeah.
not go in. This is a book
Which is, I
discussion.
mean, there's जिसके recipes नहीं है.
Yes, yes. And this is
And
again very
yeah,
diverse.
yeah, there are three or maybe four different types of samosas. Three are shown here. We always do our samosas ourselves. There's keeme ka samosa, there's matar ka samosa, and there's aloo ka samosa, and we are known for our, if I may say, delicious samosas, which we have as snacks.
Yes, yes.
So, and speaking of the photography of this, this is all the food was cooked in the house. I styled it, but there was a wonderful photographer who's a cooking photographer called Jasmeer Singh. He took the photographs.
So these photographs are really amazing when you touch with the food, memories, and utensils all coming together. This gave a unique
Yes,
shape to the book, and I think somewhere readers will also find it very interesting. So
yes,
now, Smita, because we talk about a book, if you allow me, if we say this quickly, we will go to the sections. So it starts with kebabs, then goes to soups, potatoes, vegetable, mutton with veggies, and finally ending with chutneys and murabbas and homemade organic. So if in today's generation, this something is, I think, confined to limited foods, though we have a larger variety of western foods and eateries available. In those days, I think it was not so common for the western food. So I think these murabbas and homemade pickles are on the back corner now. It's practices, I
no,
think,
no,
no
they are
more.
because they are condiments. So, they couldn't be put with the main dishes. So therefore, I use them. I mean, I put them deliberately right at the end. And soups, after kebabs are soups, and because shorbas are very well known in in Lucknow, and we all have soups. And there's like dahi ka shorba, which I always thought was so Lucknowi, till I went to Istanbul, and there they were having a yogurt soup, and I said, really, they must have taken it from Lucknow. No, it is we who took it from them, because actually food also traveled down the Silk Route.
Yeah,
Apart
food,
from
food also
goods,
traveling. Mm.
art traveled, cuisine traveled. So this is something actually we got from them, but we made it very much our own. Similarly, so many other things traveled. I mean, this use of pomegranate in our food, some Persian dishes, some Turkic kebabs. So, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about cuisines,
So,
how they
yesterday my
interinfluence
my
each other.
Persian teacher was saying that you took many names from these. This is Persian dish, this is Central Asian dish. But when I went there and I didn't find anything. So I told him that this changes with the time. We imbibed the name, we borrowed the name, we fused with our own culture, with our own spices, and transited it to a new
Exactly.
shape. But still, the names like Sheer Khurma. So
Uh,
as you see that sheer is coming from Persian milk and khurma is dates, but now sheer khurma is no more the milk and dates. It's something different.
ji,
So
ji.
the nomenclature remains same, but the styles change and vary with the cultures and the places.
Yeah. And frankly, I find that our kebabs are the most delicious, because even though kebabs did not originate in India or in Delhi or in
South
Lucknow,
Asia also.
they came from Central Asia. But you see, with what we did with kebabs, with our spices, which they did not have the advantage of having.
Yeah, yeah.
So our kebabs are very special, and I frankly find them far more delicious than
Yeah.
what you can have in Turkey or Egypt or elsewhere, apart from the subcontinent.
Yes, yes. If you go outside subcontinent, it's more bland and it's more in the raw
Yeah, it's
shape.
the
It's
same
not.
thing. I know.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's they have a different flavor, but we cannot compare it with our flavors
Gee,
definitely.
gee.
So if we go, just how did you see, as when you write the book, you travel at different places, how did you see the food is a part in a larger, as a part of our intangible heritage, and how it connect the diversities, because this is something
You
that
know,
need to be
in
celebrated.
this book, I have actually concentrated very much on food from Lucknow, whatever its different influences might have come from. And that's what I tried to very briefly explain in the chapter introductions. But my next book, which is called The India Cookbook, From the
Mhm.
Table of My Friends, that really shows the diversity of traveling up and down India. And fortunately, I have friends in the north, south, east, west, and just eating their amazing cuisine. So, see, food like culture cannot prosper or blossom in isolation. So,
Exactly.
but in this book, I had tried to keep the focus just on Lucknow and what influenced Lucknowi cuisine.
Yes.
The next book, of course, is subcontinental and what happens
So
there.
that
That's
will be
also
the
incidentally, by Aleph, the
okay,
same
okay.
publishers. Yes.
Okay, if we, because there is 150 dishes, we cannot discuss everything in this talk.
G.
But if I select one, two things from that connect you with your old days. So one, I while reading, I found there was sort of a buna gosh that more common in Lahore, I think, and your mother tried it at your home and it produced its Lahori buna gosh.
G.
So if you can elaborate a little bit about that dish especially.
Well, that is part of how you. It already Lahori Bhunawa Gosht existed in Lucknow.
Mhm.
And since her married life, or however briefly she spent in Lucknow, because she comes from Quetta, so she was really delighted. Like she also found a Multani fish. It was called Multani fish in Lucknow. So wherever possible, I tried to put in these connected recipes, because as they say, the past is always present. So you
Yes,
never
yes.
really forget the past, even though you are living in the present. So those are
So,
recipes that pertain to that.
and then one more, many fishes or many recipes has been discussed for the fishes, but one you told me that connect her from her hometown. So what was that dish that gives you your mother a nostalgia of her back home?
Lucknow firstly is very good quality river fish, river sole. So it's known for it. So our fish is very good. So I mean, yes, we do use singhara and this and that, but sole is a wonderful fish. And there are many recipes that are with fish that are used, that are with fish that are used in Lucknow. So I think I had included a couple of these, like Balochi machi, she
Yeah.
found. It was, and because she comes from Balochistan, and Lahori machi, then, dam ki machi, and machli musallam, of course, is very, very abadi. And machli ka salan, again, the Indian way, the Lucknow way, and soya fish and machli masala and fish and tomatoes and garlic sauce. That dish can't make up its mind whether it's desi or it's angrezi, but it's very popular.
It's very
So,
possible.
gee, and of course fried sole that we call is
It
part
was
of
quite
our
good.
angrezi khana. Yeah, and like angrezi khana, you would get excellent angrezi khana. We have um, our railway station is called Charbagh and built by the same British architect who did Old Delhi Station.
Yes.
And these old railway stations used to have wonderful dining halls. Ab to ye tradition hi chala gaya. With
Bilkul.
great cooks, and they would do these wonderful cutlets and puddings, which they call poutine. But all this used to happen. And one of the recipes, also, I think I've got it in this book, is something called chicken chasseur, which, because it was not only the British who had stayed behind, but Lucknow was also had a very strong French presence. So
Yeah,
us
French.
zamane ka, this must have been left over. And of course, our cook, the Khansama, could never say chicken chasseur, so he used to just call it Firangi Murgi. So, that so that dish I also included because that is all part of our everyday Lucknow food that we ate in our home. So
And if we go, even your father mentioned Royal Hotel where he stayed for a while, coming from Lahore.
3 years,
So he,
yes.
he talked about the chef there, and he say that how they are cooking it, the wonderful food, and he's getting a multi-ethnic cuisine there at that time. I think nowadays it's not quite common in the hotels you find a multi-ethnic cuisine. You find it in a different way, but not that style that was present long
Actually,
before.
the Royal Hotel Us Zamane Mein was known as the best hotel in North India. The Royal
Oh.
Hotel in Lucknow. It was kafi mashhoor
Even he
hotel
compared
tha.
it with the Shimla and hotels of Lahore and Masuri, and he said this is one of the best food they are serving here.
Yes, little realizing that
Yeah.
I, who spent my first 3 years, more or less, in that hotel, would later on become a hotel designer primarily.
Yes. So, Sunita, if you like to read a small passage for me from your
Gee,
book. So, before
I
ending,
thought, I thought if I have to read a small passage,
yeah,
let me read a general, just one paragraph
yeah,
from a
sure.
note about the book.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great.
that
That's great.
that came before the introduction, which is Watan Lost and Watan Found, from Lahore to Lucknow,
Yes.
जिसका जिक्र आपने किया था.
जी जी.
So I'll read from that, and the last uh, passage from that. I speak about Lucknow first and how my father had arrived. And then the last thing about it's really why this book, a note about that. And I start with saying David Lowenthal, the American historian, renowned for his work on heritage and spatial concepts of the past and the present, had famously pronounced that, and I quote, The past is a foreign country. Close quote. This cookbook, although palpable with nostalgia, selectively recaptures events and objects from the past that are a part of the intangible heritage of food and familial memories of gentler times. These are collective memories that conserve a sense of continuity, of belonging, and of being rooted. I believe food engenders social and family harmony. It anchors us and connects us to the past, grounds us in the present, and gives us a sense of identity and belonging. Our personal histories define us, and I have chosen to define this partly through Lucknow's food traditions. The preparation of food is learned by observation. It is a process of osmosis. In our family, all four generations are reasonably good cooks. This book documents the recipes that we have learned from my mother and from our many friends in Lucknow. And then my last sentence is one can certainly cook from this book, but one can also read through the recipes to get a glimpse of Lucknowi culture and of the lives behind these recipes. This is a book for cooks and for armchair cooks, because for people who really love food, it is a lens through which to view this particular world.
Thank you, Sunita, for wonderful reading and wonderful session. I would like to conclude the session. There are some questions, not but a feedback like topic is delicious, seems to be an interesting book, and some people say thanks to you or thanks to both of us for this session. And I would like
Thanks
to
to
say
both of
that
us.
yeah, if anybody who is a foodie, food lover, or loves the food as a part of our heritage, I would like to say that you need to look this book, and this will give you a wonderful insight, beautiful anecdotes, because she collected the narratives that were present behind, even it is Murug Musallam or food related to Wajid Ali Shah. There is some she did a wonderful review from very different culinary accounts, and also I think you collected the narratives or the part of the oral history that has been preserved or moving around the dishes. So
I tried
that's
to. I
yeah,
tried to.
that's the beauty of that. That's the beauty of the
Ji,
book. And
ji.
again, the chapter one is the most touching chapter for me. Really, that's really
Thank you.
wonderful chapter. And
Thank you.
thank you,
Many
Sunita.
people who have reviewed the book, and I must say, with God's grace, this book has had some wonderful reviews. It's been to almost every major literary festival in the country and some abroad. They said that they found the recipes as interesting as my parents' story, because that
Exactly.
is a story of secularity, of displacement, of
Yes.
making a new home,
Yeah.
having lost their watan.
And again, because when we go in the culinary details, so that's amazing. I saw one of the festival where you shared with your mother in Jaipur literary festival, I think, about the book.
Ji, ji,
And then
ji.
she really did a wonderful narrative there about her work.
And she was 92 then. Of course,
She
now
was
she's
nine. Yeah.
92 then.
She,
Yes.
she, she was 92 then. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
And also, I find a connection with Ali's father. Ali's our friend Ali Khan Mahmoodabad. We did one session with him also on his
There's a
poetry.
recipe from his
So there is
family in the
Dabi
book.
Arabi ka Salan, I think, huh?
Ji, ji.
There is a recipe
Arabic
from his,
asal.
yeah,
Yes.
that came up from his family.
Ji.
Thank you, Sunita, and it's a
Thank you
wonderful
so
session.
much.
I need to end the broadcast here.
Thank
On
you. Thank